Good morning. This is Dr. Obratashaka. Greetings to the Dr. Obratashaka show. We're honored to have a special guest, Brother Alton Wrench. How you doing, Alton?
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
As you're going to see, Alton brings some special expertise for this discussion, and that's why we're having him on the show. Economic expertise, along with a number of other areas of expertise. Before getting into the topic for the show today, I want to encourage those who haven't subscribed to subscribe to this show. And pretty soon we'll be on a number of different platforms. And subscription is very important for this show. As I always do, I'm encouraging viewers to subscribe to the year-long webinar that we'll be offering next year on the sixfold stages to mental freedom. And if you note the discussion we had last week on the relationship between African philosophy and developing cooperative economics, every one of these shows illustrate why this transformation of consciousness is so important. And if you note, last week, I started off the show by quoting from Harold Cruz in Crisis of Negro Intellectual. And in that book, which is a classic work, he talked about how backward the Black bourgeoisie in the African world is, and particularly in the United States. He identified the Black so-called middle class as the most backward middle class of any Blacks in the world. Now, that's debatable whether they're most backward, but they definitely backward. And he identified the fact that they had taken on the philosophy of their oppressors, whether radical, liberal, or conservative. And we certainly have proof of that. Well, this show and the previous two shows that preceded last week's show, where we had two social workers, former graduates of San Francisco State, these are designed to really show that when Blacks who get an education are grounded and love their people, they can be of real service. And so we got a lot of backward Blacks who are only thinking about their own pocketbook and getting a job. But when we have people like Brother Alton and the sisters we had a couple of weeks ago and others who see their mission in life as doing something greater than themselves that will be of service to their people and humanity. So that's how we break this. And that's a minority within the so-called educated group of Blacks. But it's a conscious minority. And for people who watch this show, some of you are a part of that group. In revolutionary jargon, this is called to get Blacks to get into a stage of consciousness. The left calls it class suicide, meaning dying in the mission that they've given you, which is to control your people and basically imitate whiteness to an extreme, what I call whiteitis. And so that ends up being the problem. But when you have conscious Blacks, whether they're revolutionary or progressive or whatever, they have a love for themselves and for their people, then that's how they make a contribution. And as Malcolm said, on the stick of dynamite, the fuse is the smallest part. Light it, everything else explodes. So you don't need a majority within this group to make a contribution. And as was noted last week, the biggest contribution that is generally made by Blacks in the field of business are usually everyday Black people who have some interest, some skill that they want to contribute, and they want to also put bread on the table for their families. So that is part of what this is an extension of. So again, what does that say? Generally, to get a person who has been trained in an educational system that doesn't have their interests at heart, then it means that they either came into that institution with a knowledge of themselves, or they acquired it, or a combination of the two. And that's what this sixfold stages to mental freedom is about. It's about getting people grounded in their identity, to know themselves, respect and love themselves, so that whatever their gifts are, they can go to the max in making that contribution to their people and to humanity. So I encourage people who haven't signed up for this webinar to sign up. It'll be a year-long, twice a month, 2 hours each time webinar. So sign up, send it to my email address, or you can put it in the comments below this program. So last week, the topic was African American philosophy, the basis for Black consumer cooperative economic development. And I know when we started, some people wondered, well, what does philosophy have to do with developing business? In this case, consumer cooperatives. Well, you pretty well know where people decide to put their money reflects their philosophy. And in fact, it's pretty much for too many people, their deepest belief system. They'll talk about your health is your wealth, but then all they're thinking about is getting some money, and they usually broke. You know what I mean? So that is an indication of your philosophy. So if your philosophy is you love yourself, love your people, then chances are your money is going to go where your thoughts are, to the people you love. And of course, you're going to go to what you want. And you may expect excellence, and you'll usually get it from Black people. You know what I mean? But if you have got a stereotype, you've got every reason to support someone other than yourself. As Malcolm said, we have the only Black community where someone else can come into your community, set up shop, and then we're the first ones to line up and do business with them. Whereas everything else in our life is Black, it seems when it comes to these financial transactions, we're willing to give it to whites, we're willing to give it to Asians, we're willing to give it to Latinos. And while it's true, the only group that supports Black businesses are Black people, with few exceptions, there could be a whole lot more, and a whole lot more of us who are into Black business development. So our view of ourselves, our philosophy, has everything to do with where we put our money. So this week's show is an extension of last week's, with an emphasis on economic development in general. I made the point last week that while the cooperative coming out of communal or sharing economics is the ideal, I'm not opposed to Blacks who are into business, because we need employment in our community. And very often, without that employment, some people would be homeless. And so employment is necessary, jobs are necessary, and businesses are. And the key question is, are those businesses meeting the needs of our community? And we're going to see when we get into talking to Brother Alton here. He's a good example. We brought him on because he's practicing what he preaches. So it's not just going to be a talk on economic development. He's someone who is doing it in a number of different ways in our community. And in a number of situations, he's volunteered his skills to pass on his skills to the younger generation. So this show is a extension of the last show, dealing with the theme of economic development. But here we're dealing with economic development in general, whether co-op or not. You can apply what we're discussing here today. So the purpose of this discussion today is for the purpose of sharing ideas on business organization, business development, and ways in which our people can increase their economic or business skills. And then it's also designed to encourage the support for business development. So, getting into this, Alton, um, can you give people your background? Where are you from? Tell us about your family and the people, the country you come from, Suriname. What's your educational background and how does it tie into your interest in economic development?
Yeah, again, it's a pleasure to actually be invited to be here and to share my experience and also to encourage others and those that have the same view that I have. We could actually share something and actually have the same thoughts and ideas on this platform. And again, thank you for Dr. Tasaka, that has been my mentor while I was an undergrad at San Francisco State, uh, to be a TA with him, as well as doing different other projects with him. I'm actually originally from Suriname. Suriname is a Dutch-speaking country in South America, one of the non-Spanish-speaking countries. We have Guyana, Suriname used to be called Dutch Guyana, French Guyana, and then Brazil in the northern part of South America. If it's still not familiar, for those that are familiar with Jim Jones, Jim Jones was back in the 70s in British Guyana, now called Guyana. We are not from Guyana, but the neighboring country, Suriname. We actually migrated to the US back in the 80s because of the unrest in the country. The military government took over. They ordered to execute about 12 intellectuals that actually stood in the military government's way. Uh, and two of my brothers were in that group, where my dad ended up uh, uh, early in the morning taking my brother to France, Guyana, super early in the morning, so that he could be spared from his life. And we actually wanted to have a better life for all of us, because it would be difficult for us to survive, for example, in Suriname, because they did say that those that have the same last name would have difficulties economically. Because my dad, after got my brother, my oldest brother, second oldest brother, out of there. He was a newspaper editor. My other brother was a human rights activist. He got one of them out. The other one didn't want to leave the human rights activist. After two attempts to actually execute him, he was able to escape. Um, uh, Ended up leaving, coming to San Francisco. We ended up in San Francisco as a whole family. 11 of us. I'm the youngest out of 11, and my parents, and the Bay Area became our home. Uh, Everything is here. We kind of spread out a little bit. Now we're in Sacramento, San Francisco, Oakland. Have a niece in Boston, and we pretty much still trying to stick together and help one another. My cry is definitely what I see among our people, not only here in the US, but worldwide, how we actually being treated. I did had enlightenment, taking my Africana Studies classes to kind of educate me, because often we think because we are Black, we know a lot, but till we actually read and take some of these classes, we are really kind of enlightened what is going on. I ended up going to San Francisco State as an undergrad, got my degree in sociology and Africana studies and a minor in computer science. And while I was there, they had a program to get more minorities to get their doctor's degree and skip their master's. And I was able to uh, get a scholarship, full scholarship, to get my doctor's degree. I didn't continue because I saw a different need that was more uh, important to me to do something in our communities. I'm also ended up uh, being a project of Project Rebound. Project Rebound is an program for ex-offenders when
Hold
they.
that, hold that one. We'll go into that one later.
Okay, yeah, this that is a little bit more about me and my education that I received from San Francisco State under Dr. Tasaka and another great professor that I had, Dr. Washington, Kevin Washington, that is now a chair at Gremlin University, and just being part of the whole ethnic studies group was definitely a pleasure, eye opener, uh, and just to enjoy it, and just still to this date being in contact with some of my professors, like Dr. Tasaka, by helping with different projects that I definitely want to continue doing, and also helping others to go that same path.
What I want to say to the viewers is that Alton, I'm proud to have had him as a student and then as a teaching assistant. But what really impresses me about you, and I want the viewers to know this, is that this, number one, is a very nice, very humble human being, very nice person. And that's the thing that I like most about you, and very talented and very smart. And you've been very helpful to me, the older generation, no tech person. And this guy's a real master in the computers, as is uh, Brother Cinnabar, who helps me out on this show. This brother's got some real high tech skills, and he spent hours with me, helping me on different things, and I'm really appreciative of that. And then the way in which you've gone and used your skills in the Black community, some of which we're going to be talking about today. Um, did Africana Studies in any way help you in terms of shaping ideas around business development or your general work in the community? If so, how?
It definitely did. Just learning. I remember doing a class for Dr. Washington, and the topic of Kemba Walker came up, where he ended up losing all his wealth playing professional basketball. And that really touched me, because most of us know a lot of athletes that, or heard of athletes that making a ton of money, and then even entertainers. And at a certain time in their life, they ended up being either broke or start working again at Target or Safeway, after making hundreds of millions of dollars. Because the fact is that most of us don't get the financial education or the support how to manage our wealth. While we're looking at our counterparts that are in the same fields, they flourishing even after they retire, leaving all that. Today is a really good term to use, generational wealth, that most of us don't have, or have a lack of. Good example, for example, in Marin, where this family put their house up, for sale, or had a appraiser come and appraise their home. Marin is not a cheap community, or a cheap area, but their house was appraised more than $500,000 less. They had to go ahead and uh, use a friend that is white to go ahead and portray that is her home, start changing all their pictures and put their white family pictures in there, and had another appraiser come there to appraise the home. And the house was then again reappraised, and it was done for over $1.5 million. Just to see that, with the help of some of our educators to kind of shed the light on these things for us, really kind of draw me to go ahead and, let's start one foot at a time. We won't be able to do all of them, but it is the step in the right direction. We heard of the Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Oklahoma. We heard of Marcus Garvey that was trying, hard to give us some kind of independence to really do things for ourselves. And yesterday or 2 days ago on Facebook, this young brother in Florida was talking about what Dr. Tasaka in his introduction brought up, where everybody comes in our community. Uh, for example, the seafood. They feeding us seafood that these people wouldn't even eat, but they're selling it to us. And we go there because they know that as Africans, African Americans, blacks, most of us do eat seafood, and they just put it together. One of the concerns that I have, and I always complain about, we never saw a black Chinese restaurant, but we see black soul food restaurants. The other day in Oakland on Telegraph Avenue, where I lived for 12 years, the whole place is transformed. Now they have a Whole Foods right there on the corner of 51st and Telegraph. And then if you go a little bit down where McDonald's is, I saw a Thai soul food restaurant. Okay, in San Francisco on Third Street, we have another soul food, a Hard Knock, Vietnamese soul food restaurant, and the line is long. There's a Chinese restaurant in the Bayview, not too far from where I'm located at. That is also a Chinese restaurant. Lines are long. Our brothers and sisters standing in line waiting. The guy stands in the door, spit right there on the floor, and smoke his cigarettes. But then he has another one, or they have another one in Upper Fillmore, in the western edition of in our area, where their employees wear a black uniforms, and serve people kind of an upscale way. But in our communities, people just come in and just open up shop. Again, those things are eye openers to me. They bothering me. I want to do something about it. I can only do so much, but I definitely open up to what I have learned from all my classes in the Africana Studies department. It kind of, motivate me not to give up. I know that often it is a money issue, but it's one step at a time to really go ahead and get started with some of these things. It is definitely worth it to take some of these classes, even from our young professors at these universities that can actually help us open our eyes and shed light to some of the issues that we're dealing with, that we need help with, to bring some corrections in our communities.
Yeah, that's important. What you're talking there, and a lot of that has got to do with mentalities that need to be changed, and a lot of it's got to do with people from other groups, including groups of colors, see the black market, that is the black income, as a captive one that they can come in and capture. And we have to be hard line with our position on economics, you know what I mean? And be strong in supporting our own people and not letting everybody else come in and just get rich off of us. Just as a background, as we get into this discussion on economic development, I just wanted to, uh, remind people of some things, because we often act like, oh, we're citizens and we're being discriminated against, or oh, we're citizens and the system's broken, you know, and all they need to do is just fix a few things and we'd be all right. So, as we're talking about this discussion around economic development, I think it's important to note a couple of things. Number one, as I stressed last week, we need to approach anything we do in our community correctly. And historically, we are a nation within a nation. We have a common culture, a common set of conditions, and we need to approach how we do anything as a nation. We're not a nation state. We're not like Suriname, where you have a government and a police and army. Unfortunately, we don't have an army that's oppressing us, that's made up of us. We are in the American army, but I mean our own that would be oppressing us. Be good to have one of your own that's looking out for you. And by the way, I want to note that Suriname is a very special place in the history of Africans in the Western Hemisphere. The Africans from Suriname are some of the most resistant fighting Africans during the whole period of enslavement. Many of them would get directly off the slave ship and go into the inner part of Suriname, the forest, and wage resistance. Some Suriname Africans were never enslaved. And there's one story, this is true, of a Dutch um, soldier who had captured an African warrior, and he's getting ready to put him on the rack. And on the rack, they break every bone in your body while you're alive. And this was a big brother. And then he said this before he jumped on the rack. He said, "The jaguar is afraid of me." And he jumped on that rack and they broke every bone in his body, and there was not one cry from him. And this Dutch general said, "These are Africans that can't be broken." You know what I mean? So there's a pride of resistance and a strong culture of Africans from Suriname. And Alton is very nice, but don't be fooled by the niceness. This is a brother that comes from a strong Black culture, and most Blacks who are strong are nice, and that is a key thing. So in economic development, we should view our development as developing a nation. How do we build a nation? And if we do that, then we think differently than as thinking as individuals. And we are oppressed as a nation. The other thing is, when we talk about some of the obstacles to economic development for Blacks, we need to understand why we have these obstacles. This European nation state is oppressing us next to Native Americans more than any other group. Native Americans more than any other, because they had the land, they were exterminated. 10% survived, they're growing in numbers. And so this nation state, run by Anglo-Saxon Protestants and other whites, have sought to really repress them. And second in order of oppression has been us. And so this I characterize, some people call our oppression colonial. And now, if you look at Africa or a place in the Caribbean, you call it neo-colonial. Colonial means that one nation's come in, taken over another nation directly and run it. Neo-colonialism means you're now flying a flag, you have your own president, you have your own government, but international economic organizations are still running your country. And that's neo-colonialism. So Africa faces that, the Caribbean faces that. We face not colonialism, Native Americans do, but I call it semi-colonialism, meaning we have aspects of colonialism. The police and the military, when it's necessary, operate as an occupying army in our communities. Corporations that run the country and the business leaders in local areas redline our communities or whatever for the purposes of oppression. And when you see places like Greenwood prosper, that it's an open attack, dropping bombs on them. And then when Blacks rebuild after that, because one thing we're strong on is as a group sticking together, then later they run a freeway through it, promising the Black community that they would relocate them, you know, but they were out to do one thing: break up your power. So this is the nature of what semi-colonialism is, aspects of colonialism. The reason why we're not a colony is because generally you need contiguous land, meaning normally, you need a stretch of land that is hooked up. And generally you've got the potential then for independence. Now, there are exceptions to the rule. You could say the Palestinians they're colonial, but it's not contiguous. The lands aren't separated. Well, that's because they separated them. And that's also because they took their land from them, dispossessed them, and then put them in the barren spots on 1,400 calories a day. So if you view this as a semi colonial situation where a nation within a nation is being oppressed, then you understand that you have to have some collective solutions to rise up against that. So this is kind of a background. Of course, this is all undergirded by systemic racism, where we see that a number of things happen to Black people that don't happen to anybody else. So, Alton, um, based on your experience and your study, um, are there ways in which Black business people suffer when it comes to trying to get any kind of economic support? Is there any way in which you can see other obstacles Black business people face that reflect systemic racism?
I see quite a bit of that. Definitely, not too long ago, as the funding was available for us to actually, the government make billions of dollars available for small businesses, specifically minority-owned businesses, and talking about Black-owned businesses, where the funding was barely distributed among us. Uh, UC Berkeley did a study and found out that 90, if not 95% of the funding that was allocated to minority-owned businesses was not given to minority-owned businesses, but literally to white small businesses. And one thing I have learned early on in the 80s is that white women are also minorities that also get funding, not taken away from them, but so that we could get part of the stimulus or the relief fund. It was definitely hard. I mean, I had a hard time getting any financial support uh, because it was either one reason or another. And even if you uh, have the documentation, you still didn't get it. And that was definitely one sign uh, just recently. And then going even further back, going to banks, the questions that are often being asked, because most of us, we do work with banks, but the relationship that we have with bankers is not as, white companies have with their personal bankers, or even Asians have a relationship with their personal bankers. Because how many of us do know a Black executive at the bank that we can go and have maybe a glass of wine or some coffee with, that can actually give us the ins and outs of how we could get a loan? This That is definitely an issue. I have experienced it, and by not giving up, I keep talking to some of the organizations that are in the community, like Main Street, to help minority-owned businesses. And now, uh, months later, finding out things that we should do so that we can get some funding. The only problem is that every time you run into a new organization, you have to start all over. And the process takes 3 to 6 months to get you where you want to be. And it is difficult because you never get off the ground. Uh, the only benefit in my situation is because I had a saving. I do have a 9 to 5, as we call it, that I'm able to use my 401k to fund my project. But not all of us have that opportunity to do that. It is hard. Uh, we do have micro lending uh, organizations out there, the city in San Francisco had a program to give or to borrow up to not half a million, but up to $50,000 to minority-owned businesses in certain zip codes. And even then, I didn't get anything. It is it is difficult uh, looking back at this documentary that Miss O'Brien did. Used to work for CNN and also for KRON, called Black in America. She ended up did a project in Silicon Valley where, you know, our numbers, we can count us in one hand in Silicon Valley, leave alone get funded for our projects. And this Indian guy said, if you want to get funding, you have to have a white person, to be the face of your company. But he has to be specifically from certain schools like Berkeley or Stanford, because those are the people that do get money. And also, if you look at some of these incubators like Y Combinator, look at the group of people that are actually invited to these programs and what funding they get. There's a group that only looks at just Ivy League schools, inventors, or startups. This we do have a lot of work to do, but we do have a challenge. Get the funding that we need. Uh, Even if you're only looking for 5,000, it's sometimes hard, but there is light at the end of the tunnel that we can actually get together and work with a few organizations to figure out what we need to do to actually help one another out, because we do need help. We do need to do something about this disparity, because uh, we we can go any longer by not having any businesses of our own and supporting and only letting other people come in the community that don't care about us, and open up shop, and just start selling us things that they wouldn't eat, but they selling it to us, and literally just laughing, laughing at us because a we are their bank. If they need money, they just come open up shop and start selling things to us, and we just gonna go buy it because it looks good.
You had suggested that maybe we respond to some comments while we're going.
Okay.
This is one by Kit DR. Black Americans were oppressed more than Indians. They got land and reparations. We got zero.
Mhm.
Now, I think that Kit DR has got a point in that Native Americans got some land. Now, we'll talk about that one in a minute. But I don't think there's any way you can say that slavery is worse than genocide. 90% of Native Americans were wiped out, period. We did face some genocide through the Middle Passage, and certain islands in the Caribbean literally turned over. Barbados had something like 900,000. Today they've got 300,000. That's a genocide. But if you look at the Caribbean, they wiped out the Arawaks and all the others. So a lot of people don't like to get into this who are more oppressed. I don't generally, but with Native Americans, they're rock bottom. True, they got reservations, but it was away from their lands, no good lands until they found something on them, like the Black Hills, where I've demonstrated in support of Native American movement. But generally, they're on lands without running water, without electricity, without any health care. I mean, you want to talk about bad? It doesn't get any worse than that. So, yeah, you've got a point that we didn't get our reparations. We didn't get our 40 acres and a mule. Neither have Native Americans. And when you kill people, yeah, and he's got black, he's saying Indians own slaves too. Yes, yes, some did. And some fought with us, and they were a place where we could go for sanctuary during enslavement. The Seminole Native Americans and Africans fought together, the only successful wars of Native Americans and the only successful slave revolts of blacks. So you can say other things. The key point is nothing worse than genocide. And I'm not putting down our oppression. Got any comment on that, Alton?
Uh, no, I mean you're right. I mean everybody got some kind of reparation, right? Even here in our area, in the Fillmore, for example, where when the Japanese or Asians were all picked up and taken to Angel Island, you know, it was blacks that keep their homes for them, you know, and not too long ago, they even got reparation. Everybody is getting reparation. Right now, they talking about it for blacks to get some kind of reparation, but you know, it's still a long way to go. You know, definitely, I won't say that I don't appreciate it that they opening more doors for us to kind of do business with corporations that I will go into in a little bit. But you know, yeah, these things are overdue. We do need to talk about them, not only talk about them, but we need to find a solution because just talking about it and no solution, it doesn't bring us anywhere.
Yeah, and I would say if you're counting on reparations to finance black businesses, don't hold your breath because generally reparations are given when those who are demanding it have the power to get it, or when those that get it have allies who are strong enough to impose it on the ones that give it. Like, for example, the Germans giving reparations to the Jews. They were defeated. So the West could put pressure on them, they give it up. So we're entitled to reparations, and there have been little piecemeal things done, but that's going to be a power relationship before they give up anything. Barbados just moved out of being a part of the Commonwealth to being a republic. And the successor to the Queen made the comment about how ashamed they were of what they did during enslavement. The hell if they're ashamed. You know what I mean? The hell. Tell the Queen to give up all those Queen jewels. Tell Britain to give up a good part of its wealth that was financed through the slave trade. The British practiced polite colonialism. I made this comment a long time ago. I was in Las Vegas years ago, sister making up the room from Jamaica. And so I said, "Oh, um, I've heard that Garvey had trouble organizing blacks in Jamaica. And it had something to do with the attitudes." And she said she wasn't offended. She wasn't like, "Oh, I'm putting down the Jamaicans." She said, "Oh, yes." She said, "The British have a way of doing things that they tell you to go to hell so nicely that you look forward to the trip." You know what I mean? So, the British have their nice way of saying, "I'm sorry," but they're not giving you anything. And that indicates they're not sorry, you know? And they're the grandfathers of the ones who did the number on you. So I'm saying we're entitled to reparations, but you better be building some power of your own. That's the only way you're going to get it.
Mhm.
And economic power is only one part of it. And by the way, I don't want anybody to get the idea from these discussions that I think that if we were able to even empower Black people completely economically, we'd be free. Uh-uh. Check the Jewish situation out in Germany. They had quite a bit of economic power. And what happened to them? So economic power is one of the things we need, but it is not the sole thing that's going to produce freedom. But it is a key one, a key one. You need to be able to finance some of the things that are important to you, from romance to liberation. No finance, no romance. And if you haven't got any kind of money, it's going to be hard to get the honey. You hear what I'm telling you? Y'all didn't know I did a little poetry. Not very good, I must admit. So Alton has been describing the obstacles and the fact that he's too humble to say this. Alton is a big time high tech computer person working in a big multi billion dollar law firm. He holds up some real high tech skills in that law firm. So normally you could walk into a bank just with that, let alone the other skills that he has. And I'm sure his little reserves that he had, and that generates a loan. And normally it would generate a non secured loan. You know what I mean? Meaning you ain't attaching it to none of your property. But black people get treated like, I don't care how good we are, we're bad. And white people get treated like no matter how bad they are, they're good. So this is a part of structural racism, but this is a part of semi-colonialism. The system is down to keep you down. Recognize that, and then we have to develop strategies to overcome that. Garvey had his, other groups have had theirs. We have to have ours, and some of our people do, but more of them need to be empowered with some of this knowledge. Now, what are some measures that you would suggest that Black people can take to provide financing for Black businesses? And are there any international connections that would also be useful in economic development, um, whether with Africa or the Caribbean, whatever?
There are, multiple things that all of us could do, right? Since we are here in the Bay Area, Northern California, we know that we don't have a black bank or black financial institutions, and those are things that are key in anything commercially that we need to do. Uh, Things that we probably need to start doing is get a group together where we can figure out how to open a credit union or some kind of banking institution where we can actually start helping those that have uh, entrepreneurial ideas to kind of help them to finance it. They're going to have to bring something in. What I have noticed a lot when I'm uh, joining certain organizations is they willing to help you financially for a little stake in your organization. And then what they ended up doing is once you are successful, you can buy your stake from them out of their hand, where you become sole owner. Those would be great ideas for us to go ahead and start thinking about that. Those that can come together with a little bit of funding that we have. One way I have financed my venture uh, is through savings, 401k, because I do have a 9 to 5. But not all of us do. But we all have great ideas. But again, not all of us are risk takers, because whatever you do in life is a risk. You have a job, it's a risk, because it's no guarantee tomorrow that your card to get into the building will work. My experience is that every time people tell me how good of an employee I am, I know that I need to start getting my things ready, because my next thing is that we don't need you anymore. And I experience it many, many, many times. This here for all of us is something that we really need to take seriously. Yes, banks looking for certain credit ratings makes it hard for us to get any funding. To get a $5,000 or $2,500 micro loan to get something started is often a challenge. This we really need to figure out together how we can actually fix this. And we all have ideas, but let's bring those ideas together and put a foot forward. Let's take a risk. Let's take a chance and do one, two, three punches and see how it works, and encourage one another not to give up. Let's continue doing it. Okay, you need a space. What I do is normally go to really affluent uh, districts and look at their ideas. They have sunglass hut. They have a coffee shop, an upscale coffee shop. They have boutiques. They have a dentist office. They have a little grocery store. We can use these same models in our community and do the same thing. We don't have to have, for example, we don't have to have a boutique that is 1,000 square foot. No, it can be 100 or 200 just to start out. Same thing with an optical, same thing with a dental office. Even if the dental office is just starting out with maybe 2 days a week, but have it in the community, have the boutique, have the little grocery store. I mean, we do have some stores in there, but often the items in those places are expired. But they do really well selling their alcohol. They do really well selling their cigarettes. But then when you go to these other zip codes, where you know, as soon as you enter it, everybody start looking at you with a different lens. Uh, you don't see a liquor store there, for example. You might see a really good upscale supermarket where you can even buy a avocado. I mean, yeah, you're gonna buy avocado in our area or community for 99 cents, and the you know same size avocado might be looking a little bit better for 4.99. I mean, we don't have to use those prices, but we can get healthy things in our communities. But it has to start with us. We can't wait for people to come anymore and open up shop. As you guys notice, and it's world news all over the country is being shown how they closing down drugstores, closing down Walgreens left and right. Uh, but they only show one part, right? I mean, nobody talks about who else is also involved in it. Makes us, of course, the target and make it look like we just don't want some of these places in our communities. But no, we're just gonna have to educate one another. And when we see some of these things happening, we're just gonna have to speak up, because once you have your investment involved in something, I think the conversation will change. But we have to start somewhere. We have to take ownership of places. Like, we don't have to have a Foot Locker in our community, but we can create a venture just like Foot Locker and put it in our community. When people see who owns it, the respect will come. And we can talk to them. Let's start hiring one another. You have a business idea? Hey, let's see what we can do and help you and make it a reality. But those are things that we're going to have to do. We're going to have to put our resources together, uh, and start acting like we own our own venture capital. It might not be $1 billion, but it's a start, because we only need a few $1,000 really to start a location, help negotiate the rent with landlords. Most of the places in our communities are not even owned by us anymore, but we can still talk to them. See, hey, maybe 6 months free rent. Let's grind, let's hustle, and make that money within the 6 months, and also help one another get all the legal papers. We Most of us are entrepreneurs. I'm looking at some of the brothers on these corners that are really working hard, hustling, but why not doing it legally? you know let's go pay our taxes so that these people leave us alone. And often that is what happens. Let's pay our tax on time. Those are things that we really need to start thinking. Let's put things together. Let's start writing things on paper. I mean, the process is not as hard as it seems, but sometimes we do need somebody holding our hand, gave us that encouragement. And, I'm willing to help wherever it is. Uh, and I can help do some research, come up with some ideas how we can actually get these things done. Knowing a few people here and there, we all know somebody that can actually guide us to a certain direction. Knowing what I have done so far, came across a lot of nonprofits that might have resources available to us. What sometimes is hard, but we can actually start somewhere, talking to them, and start opening our own financial institution, for example. Stop going to these cash check places. Might as well start our own cash check place and then convert that into a bank, because we're going to need that sooner or later. But all these cash check places in our community is, it's not even owned by us. There's a liquor store in the community, one of the only black ones, and I'm looking the comparison with him and the other Arabs, and the one in the the one in the Arabs, where they own it, are busier than the one that the brother owns. So those are things that we do need that help with, to really help one another, so that we can come up with some kind of financial help to kind of make us have the dream that we would love to have. Let's help our young ones, with some kind of employment, some training, so that we can actually be somehow independent. We want to have people. My goal really is, when you come to San Francisco, regardless of who you are, you have to come to the Bayview, not only to Talios, but come and shop all the merchants there in the Bayview. The Bayview is a historically African American corridor, and it's sad, because hardly nobody comes and visit us, except when people, of course, need some votes and stuff like that. But we can do better, and we should do better.
Now, those are good points, and I would add a couple. One is there's a tradition that Africans in the Caribbean have retained. It comes out of Africa,
Mhm.
and in Africa it's called the susu, and in Jamaica it's called partner. It's called that in the UK. And some people who are listening to the show may have heard of this. It's where people put money, a group of people come together, and the idea is to create a pot of money, and it rotates. People keep putting it in, and each person that gets that pot then has got a capital basis for starting a business. In the UK, they used this when they first moved in to the United Kingdom, blacks from the Caribbean and Africa, and they used it to buy a home or whatever. So as one person gets it, uses it, then that pot is replenished, and then it moves to the next person. Each person eventually pays off what they put in. We would have to revisit this, because this is not an institution we continue, but it's one that we need to develop. And with us, we would have to develop some trust for that to work. But that's one way. There was implied in what you said, Alton, that you ended up having to go into your own personal resources, your savings and 401k, to have the initial financing for your business. If you look at Barry Gordy, Motown was started on a loan from his family. It was very small, you know what I mean? And that was the basis for that. Um, Believe it or not, I do economic development, and I'm one of the few in the movement that does this. I'm revolutionary, but I do some economic, development. I think being broke is a joke for us. If you have the opportunity, you got a little bit of money and you don't put it together for something, that's your fault. Now, the average one of us, we have trouble getting any money, but even then, we could do better. And I think one of the things is we need to learn how to live on our needs and not on our wants, and to save as much as possible. When I married my first marriage in 1969, we had a policy in our house. Other than the allowance each one of us got, which is $150 a month, that was our allowance. 100% of my wife's money went into savings. 75% of mine did. The other 25% took care of our expenses, you know, and that enabled us to accumulate a little capital base, you know. And I always say you need reserves not for a rainy day, but to do whatever you want to do. That's the whole idea. So even though a good deal of our money goes towards essentials, rent, food, the basics. And then if we've got poor health issues, health, and a lot of us don't have health care, and in this country you should, all over the Western world they do. So any of these things can really cause you trouble. So we know that. But how many black parents find the money to buy some of these Michael Jordan sneakers, man, that are costing so much money it's ridiculous. I mean, um, I'd go to certain stores where they give discounts and I get some good shoes, but I ain't paying the full price. And I could, you know what I mean? But I ain't never going to buy no tennis shoes at $300 and $400. Give me a break. You know what I mean? So some of it has got to do with our priorities. And I understand we're oppressed. So I'm not suggesting that we have all this money to spend, but there is excess. And last week we gave some of it. Now, right here, Black Voltron Reloaded, he has a comment, uh, question to you, Alton. He said, what does Mr. Alton Wrench think about using online crowdfunding sites like Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and GoFundMe? Do they work in getting more operational funds to open and maintain a business? Good question. What do you think, Alton?
Uh, those are good platforms to use. My experience with them is that you're gonna have to find the people to put the money in there for you. You know, you create it, and pretty much, yeah, it's gonna be on you. Uh, I used them. I still have one of them that is not fully funded yet because I have to tell all my friends to go ahead and put the money in and stuff like that. I use Kiva, but again, you have to go around and tell all your friends to kind of put the money in there for you. It's doable. It's hard, but it is a start. And the reason why I brought up the one for the earlier, I spoke about Y Combinator. Y Combinator is a company that looks only for tech startups because there's where the money is. And most of us, as young ones, not me, but the young ones, they love tech. Why not coming up with some ideas? And why not us starting something where we can actually put money in a pot, just like Dr. Tasaka brought out, that when some of us moved to Europe from the Caribbean and Africa, we started this pot to kind of help fund some of our things. Those are things that we can do as well. Uh, if you know enough people, don't start as people told me, don't start with a big amount of money you're looking for with these platforms. Just keep it on a minimum, just to start out, get your foot wet, and then hopefully with a second round that you want to do, that more people know about you, and then they might ended up supporting you. But in the beginning, just start it small. It's not a bad idea. I tried it. It kind of didn't work for me, but I'm willing to try it again. And now that I have a little bit more funding, I would do it and get a marketing firm behind me just to go ahead and push it. I was fortunate enough that when I started my second one, uh, they ended up, people at work with George Floyd, they all call us, right? Because most corporations, you have a handful of blacks or African Americans working, and they all called us, and they cried out, how sorry they feel for what is happening, and they were willing to support whatever we do. They know that in my situation that I have Talios coffee and tea, and they want to figure out how they could support, and they ended up supporting. Those are things we want to do. We want to have something tangible that benefits, for me, it has to benefit the community, not just me and my family, but the community. Because going to certain places, uh, I still cry. I'm 53 and I get emotional. I mean, when I go to Oakland, my heart, I can't take it, and that's why I'm working really hard on what I'm doing so that we can make some changes. Most of us, when we finish school, we can't just say we're gonna go to Africa for 3 years for free and volunteer and make a difference. Other groups can, but I haven't seen many of us that can do it. We can barely do it in our own community to say, hey, you know what? Let me do this for free for a year, and make a difference. It would be nice, but if you can, I would encourage it. But those are things we need to do. Let's try, and yeah, the platforms are good, but let's reach out to some of our groups so that we can actually raise the funds, or maybe we can figure out how to create our own platform. Because what happens is the platform that we support, they're going to get a percentage of the money that we put in. Kiva did it 100%, didn't take anything out. But what we need to do, but you have to pay it with Kiva, you have to pay it back. You had to pay it back. But with the other platforms, it's money that people put in, uh, and want to help you. And I have a number of those platforms that I'm familiar with, and most of us are familiar with them. But that is how they work. You have to have your circle really put the money in, and your circle, they know somebody else, figure out a way how you can tell them to tell them to tell them, so that we can actually put a pot together and really create some kind of trust. Uh,
Usually, those platforms work for you when you have something established that the community is seen and supported. And it can not only be the Black community, but other communities as well. I'll give you an example. Marcus Bookstore during COVID-19 was shut down, and literally they needed to have an income coming in. And so they did GoFundMe, and they got over $300,000, you know, and that really enabled them to stock the store better and everything else, let alone keep going. But that's because they've been in business since 1960. They've actively involved in the community. There are a lot of people that see their value. They got a huge amount of support from whites because they do a lot of programming with KPFA when they bring in named speakers and stuff. So they're familiar with them, and a huge support from the Black community. So that's usually when that will work. Otherwise, what Alton is suggesting is the way to go. Now, we have a comment here by Black Voltron Reloaded. And he said, I remember about 20 years ago, Black folks out here in the Bay Area tried to create our own version of Susu called Friends Helping Friends. It worked very successfully. Um, why don't you share that with us? Send me some information on that, because that's something, and it's interesting how you titled that, because that's adapting an idea to your situation. Because who's going to resist friends helping friends? And I'm sure you brought some friends in to help friends, and some that wanted to know your friends to get some help. That's smart. So share that with me. Send me something on that so we can share it with people. Um, let's see. Black Botron Reloaded also said, I know, brother, I'm born, raised, and still living here in Oakland. We're getting priced out of here with the quickness. It's about to be totally gentrified. Black folks like the Fillmore. I want to say something on that. When you had the former Governor Brown, who was then mayor of Oakland, come in because he was reviving his career, getting ready to build a reputation so he could run for governor again, which he did. And so he had a kind of leftover reputation with the Black Panther Party, Elaine Brown, and then they did some stuff. And so and then he had a show on KPFA, which listeners sponsored, more radical programming. So he appeared to be, pro-Black. This was a predominantly Black community when he moved in. But then I was talking to one of our business people, who's a major business person in Oakland, and he said he told his cabinet of people working with him he was going to destroy the Black elite in Oakland. And then what he proceeded to do was condemn a whole lot of properties that Blacks own. My friend in particular owns a major business in Oakland, a premier business, and they wanted to run a thing on him. He owns the building that he's in. It's a huge building in Oakland. And they're going to run a thing on him where they were saying is he didn't have sufficient capital to run his business. Since when do you need any particular amount of capital to run a business? I mean, as long as you pay your taxes and, keep your building up to fire code standards and stuff like that. And then he began to run a thing for bringing in new people into Oakland, 10,000 to begin with. And so you saw all of these condos being built. And that was the beginning of gentrification on a serious level. Part of the reason that worked was you had a pretty bankrupt Black political leadership class that had been running the city before that. Lionel Wilson, who came in when Bobby Seale didn't run a second time and would have probably been elected. What was his qualification for office? He was a judge. He put people in jail. He didn't do much of anything when he became mayor. And then you had another mayor who engineered the takeover of Oakland schools when they didn't need to be taken over, so he could just get a reputation to become a viable candidate for mayor. And he ended up being elected mayor. So that bankruptcy also put Black people in the vulnerable position where this kind of stuff could happen. That's that bankrupt Black middle class. Not all of them, but too many of them. But this problem of gentrification is a real serious problem. Whites want to move back into inner cities. And so then the banks and everything else are set up so you get the financing if you're white to build up your area. I mean, if you get a house, you get a low interest loan to rehab it and all this stuff. So that's what's happening in Oakland. It's a rough thing. So what I would say is this, if you have property, keep it. You know what I mean? And if it's a question of it being passed on, someone in your family dies, try and pass it on to the family. And if not, sell it to a Black person. By the way, that's what Chinese do. You can't go into Chinatown and buy any property, not white, Black, brown, or anything else, and not even yellow if you're not Chinese. I was into an economic development group, and we were looking at property in the Chinatown, and so it was a property for sale. I never saw somebody who tried to unsell a property. The guy who owned it was showing you everything wrong with the property because he didn't want you to buy it. And I said, that's intelligent. You know what I mean? When are we going to learn that? That's called economic nationalism. Getting back into this discussion. So this has been very, very important. We need financing that's going to have to come from us. And if we can get it from anybody else for whatever we're going to build in our community. So Alton, you were making the point that we need communities where things are really built up nice, you know what I mean, rather than run down. Now, it used to be that we had communities like that. It used to be if you went into West Oakland, it was like that. The Fillmore was like that. Harlem was largely like that. I mean, you go across the country and you had blacks who had hotels and top flight stuff, and then sometimes medium, like everybody, but really classy stuff going on. Theaters that we own, the Fillmore used to have a theater in the Fillmore, you know. So those were blacks coming from the South who brought their entrepreneurial uh, attitudes, into the so-called North and built up those businesses. And they were extended family communities. And I remember being born in the Fillmore. I lived there for 7 years. That was a nice community, and a lot of black people living in these Victorians that they later wanted to call slums and stuff. Slums my butt. Those were mansions. I bought one for our organization, 5,800 square feet. I wouldn't live in it because I don't profit from what I get for the movement. But secondly, it was so big. I just felt like I'd be isolated. You know, but the blacks were living in mansions and they paid 20,000 for them, 30,000. Stuff like that. And then in came redevelopment. So there was a time where we had communities that were whole. It's still oppressed, but black people were doing business. Black people had jobs. We're putting them into housing and stuff like that. And of course, blacks had class. You hear me? You want to talk about some class? I mean, a sister was on our show a couple of weeks ago. Was talking about how her father was a Pullman porter, and this was typical of blacks. They go to work uh, in the nines, shoes shine, suit on, everything else, to be a Pullman porter or a janitor. They go take their clothes off, do that work, and then come back home. You know what I mean? So that was the class of it. And we're still oppressed and everything else, but we were providing a cushion. So what do you think some of the things are, Alton, that brought about this shift in black communities where they don't, where a lot of things are deserts now,
Mhm.
food deserts, business deserts. Um, the CVCs you're talking about that are closing down, a lot of them don't have them to begin with.
Yeah. Some of it also has to do with economics, right? Most of us, we don't shop much in our own community, number one. And then most of our communities are actually designed where people that can survive in other areas, they ship them to our area, and I see that quite a bit where now we have more, a lot of homeless camps and areas in some of our areas while they cleaning up other part of the city. They moving them to our area. The people that also come into our area are buying the property because most of our areas are the only one left that are affordable, although they still $1 million for a home, but where people can afford it. I have attorneys from my office that do live in, for example, in the Bayview, because those are pretty much some of the few areas left that they can purchase homes. But then again, uh, all the bad stuff that has also been brought in, you know, uh, we see the homelessness, the drug addiction. Uh, People don't stop people from doing certain bad things. They let it happen. The news showed how, for example, Walgreens in the Bayview or is being robbed, and nobody stops anybody. Nobody says anything. Next minute, the place is closed. Our elders that rely on drugstores now have to go out of town to get their medicine because those places are closed. You know, the we can't leave everything to uh, the politicians. Sometimes we're gonna have to do things as well. Probably try to stop certain things. Of course, we're not the police, but we can talk to one another. If we can help somehow, because homeless people don't only need housing; they also need mental health. Because those that literally sleep on the street often they do need mental health. Those that sleep in cars, sometimes things didn't work out for them and they were able to keep their car or their van. But if they get a housing, you can see the transformation, how things work out for them. There is uh, quite a bit of work to do on both ends, that we all are responsible for, just to help somehow, somewhere. uh, Somebody asked me something on the street. you know I don't support you going and buy alcohol or drugs, but I will help you get some food. If you need a room for, a night or two, I'm willing to help. Uh, but it's deeper than that. You know, we're going to have to reach out to the medical field, just give us some more support, because our people don't only need a safe side to go shoot drugs or to smoke. No, they need mental help. They need food. They need a roof over their head. But
Yeah,
it
now, now,
comes.
now, now, one of the things I think is important to really understand, because we started this off by saying understand semi-colonialism, institutional racism is real key to understanding what we're facing. And I think in addition to what you said, Alton, there's some other things as well that have caused the breakdown of Black communities and sometimes their destruction, because we have communities that don't exist anymore, the Fillmore, for example. And for one of the reasons that we see communities in such bad shape, I've discussed this before in another context, but now we're looking at it economically, is deindustrialization. And when the decision was made by big business to take industrial businesses out of the country,
Mhm.
um, then what happened is a huge loss of jobs. And since we were heavily concentrated in those industrial jobs, making up 20% of the industrial workforce when we only made up 10% of the population, it had a disproportionate effect on us. So that when those jobs collapse, families collapse. And with that, it's a part of a community collapse. And so you see places like the Bronx where literally people can no longer pay rent, and landlords are setting those buildings on fire, to collect on the insurance. And so then they become real deserts. And so when people are running for president, they'd always go to the Bronx and say, oh, it's terrible. But then what did they do to deal with this? So you had Reagan coming in, and with neoliberalism, the idea that the government should get out of the business that helps people. So one of them was housing. Reagan cut 81% of the housing budget that provided housing for low and moderate income people. So then that contributes to what is homelessness now with the rising cost of rent and mortgages. And so people are working. Some of the people at those cars that are homeless, they're working. They're sleeping in the car because they can't afford to rent. And Oakland is just building condos all over the place. I work out at the Y, and you just sit up there and just nothing on Broadway. Blank lots are filled up with huge condos, and people are paying probably $3,000 a month for one bedroom. You know what I mean? That's bigger than a mortgage. So all of these are driving people into poverty. Now the other thing is, with deindustrialization, we've often focused on how they ship the manufacturing jobs to places like China or Mexico, places like that. We often don't focus on the fact that a part of deindustrialization involved shipping both business but resources to advanced countries like China and Europe, not China, Canada and Europe. Advanced economies, money went in there because they have skilled people, and there's way for big business to make money. And now there's the shipping It's not really the shipping, but the transference of skilled jobs. So you have engineers, you have architects, you have people with high-tech skills. It's being sent to India, you know what I mean? Or somewhere else. Cinnabar, if you can, clean this up on the site here. So that all of this is undermining the economic basis for people in this country, people who have skills, all in the name of profit. So this is part of what then leads to the weakening of Black communities, because if you ain't got jobs, you can't maintain a family, then businesses are torn down due to redevelopment. You're putting drugs in the community, all the rest of this stuff. This is designed to deteriorate the lives of the people. Go to Europe. This doesn't happen. Why? Because these are largely homogenous communities, even though they got some people coming in Germany from Turkey, and Britain from India, and from the Caribbean and stuff like that. These social safety networks where you come out of jail and you got a house to stay in and you're trained for a job. That's for white people. Blacks get into it and they benefit. But here, because of racism, they can sell a white person on the fact of ending welfare because it's for Blacks, even though the majority of people are white that are on welfare. And so they go crazy like now, you got this critical race theory or whatever it is. No such thing. I mean, public schools are not teaching Black history. They should, but they aren't. But that's a myth. So if you can raise the red flag of racism with white people, they'll hurt themselves. Do stupid. They'll do it. So this is part of what hit our communities. Now, one of the things that happens with deindustrialization and the tearing up of Black communities in other ways, and by the way, with deindustrialization, the industry goes to Asia, the industry goes to Europe. It does hardly not go to Africa. Mm-hmm. Ain't that interesting? Because even though you get exploited under deindustrialization, if you've got leadership that's handling it right, they can use that to build up their economy. That's what happened in China, So keep the industry out of Africa while they impose neoliberalism, structural adjustment, where they strip people of free education, free healthcare, and everything else. So this is part of what not only affects Black communities in the U.S., but it affects the African world, not just in Africa, but in the Caribbean. If you look at how they attacked Jamaica, I've discussed this before. So one of the things that we have when it comes to why economic development, we have a skills mismatch. And this skills mismatch is extremely important because with the deindustrialization of America, the jobs we were concentrated in, those jobs are not as important now. This important book I know a number of you have read and others you need to read, Blueprint for Black Power, Amos Wilson. This book is as thick as mine, right here. You all seen this? I know you've read it. It's an excellent book. And it's too bad the brother's not around today. And so he's showing you that a lot of the skills that Blacks are concentrated in now are skills that are going out. And the skills we need to be in, we're not in to the degree that we need to be in, because with deindustrialization, with Blacks concentrated in there and other jobs like that, it throws us out of sync. This ain't our fault. Most people who have a high school education or less will work in whatever will enable them to survive. And so Blacks got into industrial work, World War I and World War II, and post that. But when those go, you're in a boat without a paddle. And so this is little data that he provides. So he shows where our concentration of jobs are. Janitors, 21%. Correction officers, 23.3%. Short order cooks, 23.3%. Security guards, 23.5%. Vehicle washers, car washers, 25.4%. Laundry and dry cleaning, and I bet those numbers are way down now, 26.1%. That used to be a business that we had a lot of. Hotel maids and housemen, 27.2%. Postal clerks, 27.7%. They're doing their best to privatize the post office. Those are some of the best jobs that blacks with a high school education have, and some with a college education. Nursing aides, 31.2%. So look at the heavy concentration in these low skilled jobs. But look at the concentration, designers, 2.9%, lawyers, 2.6%, architects, 2.1%, cabinet makers, 2.1%, bartenders, 2.1%, dentists, 1.5%, commercial pilots, 1.5%, speech therapists, 1.3%, dental hygienists, 1.1%, geologists 0.7. So what you're seeing here is that the high-end jobs that are the jobs of the future, we're not concentrating to the degree that we should. And it's the same when you go to management jobs, technical jobs, and others that require high skills. We find that we're not concentrated in to the degree that we should be. So this is suggesting that one of the things that needs to happen is a skills shift. Some of the things that we're in now, we need to be prepared to get into other things that enable us to take care of families and stuff. So, Alton, one of the things that you're a specialist in is computer technology, and um, and particularly computer technology skill transfers, which is suited for this high tech economy. Describe your skill set. How did you get it? I heard you just say you minored in computers at State. Um, how do you see the youth? Do you see the youth more oriented to a high tech kind of thing in terms of their basic natural skill set? Describe the training that you provide to Black youth through training them in computer technology. What do you think Blacks can do to prepare our youth and people in general in this area of skill development?
Yeah,
I ask
especially
you all these questions because you're real heavy, so I know I don't have to ask one question. I can ask a bundle of them, and you'll even answer some questions I didn't ask. So,
yeah, no, thank you. Yeah, the thing is, in our area, being here in the backyard of the Silicon Valley, uh, a lot of us do use technology more than any other ethnic group out there. But when it comes to the employment part or the creation or the design of these products, is 0.0%. You know, but we should actually start looking into it. It's just again economic, right? Because if you want to create an app, it's going to cost you money, and then not
what's
because
an app? What's an app?
an app is something that you're going to use either on your tablet or on your smartphone. Uh, One of them, for example, we have an app, Talios Coffee and Tea, that is available on both platforms, Apple, iOS, as well as the Android platform. Uh, when you order food, for example, on Uber Eats, or when you order a ride from Uber, you have to use an app. But those things you can create it because they create apps now or programs now that it doesn't cost you much, but just to get it on these platforms as well as getting the licenses for them ended up costing money. This again, we stuck in an economic warfare that sometimes makes it hard for us to get our product out there because we're going to have to market it. People need to know about it because if people don't know, you can have an app there and nobody's going to go ahead and click on it. It's the thing is that now that they have certain services available, like Coursera is a free uh, online uh, program that you can get certified to get anything. Uh, you have at ed uh, or edx.org is another one that they work, these guys, including itunes University, they work with Ivy League schools, the same programs they teach there. You don't have to be in the class, but you can take those classes online, and for a fee, you can get certified on those. If you don't need a certification, you just take them for free. And these programs are available where, as long as you have internet, you can actually download or go to these programs and start taking classes or following. And you can get anything from language courses to computer science knowledge, to get a certification in uh, fixing computers, for example, even to be an entrepreneur, things that you do need to, to get started, how to write a business plan. But those programs are available now. In my situation, because I had a love for uh, technology before school, or even as an undergrad, uh, I used to buy computers from Craigslist and refurbish them and resell them. And then after graduating, got a job at Genentech as a computer technician. And every industry has their own method of training people. This, if you have at least basic knowledge, you get in. It's sad, but sometimes they hire you because they need to get a quota of so many people hired. Uh, but when you get in, you get their training, because everybody has their own image that they want to have on their systems, because of security reasons, and because their methods is also different from the next biotech company, for example. But yeah, those are ways that you can get in. And once you get in, you learn more. In my situation now, I'm learning about internet security, because law firms are being hacked left and right. One thing, and it's across the board. If somebody gave you that you don't know a USB, don't put it in your computer, because that is how they get into your system as well. But you learn these things. You get opportunities to advance in your career if you want to continue at whatever firm you work for, to get better computer knowledge. Because I do desktop engineering as well as software, because our firm create their own programs for the attorneys that we actually ended up having on the market for other law firms. This having that skill is definitely one you can start out with, and I would suggest, instead of paying all these schools these high amounts of fees just to get a certification, definitely try Coursera, COURSERA.org, edx.org is another one. You have Grow with Google is another one that has different paths that you can actually take. And again, it's not only about computer, but it's good to know it. We definitely want to encourage, especially our young ones, because we're using technology so much. Why not getting into it and getting paid for it, instead of paying them for it?
Um, could you go into a little bit what you've done in terms of training young people in computer technology? Because you've given your free time and trained some. What have you done? What was the age group?
Yeah,
What was some of the impact?
yeah, I did ended up using some of my skills just in the community, created a nonprofit so that people could actually know and how to navigate their computers. Ended up in the process, came across some desktops that we were able to donate uh, to our program, so that people that needed it, they could have it and take it home with them. But we ended up giving Computer 101. So definitely the security of the internet, what you needed to do so that you can protect yourself. Because even in my situation, I literally just do everything uh, online. I don't work with cash. I don't work with my cards. It's everything is on my phone uh, to use. But all those things also come with security that you definitely want to have on your devices. And we make sure that helping those that are new to it, that they have all the skills to protect them. You know, make sure that you get a really tight password, because now they're using they're using programs that can read your your password. And once you actually get firm about it, most of the time we use the same password for all of our other things, because not having a system to remind or to save multiple passwords, we just use the same one over and over and over. And that makes it so much easier for hackers to get into people's systems. I taught them, make a two-word with a space password. Definitely put a character in there to help you to protect your valuables. uh, and then also the way we navigate on social media. uh, I don't put all my business online, and that is what often happens. Yeah, you might have a million friends, but how many do you really know? One thing I also make sure, and I let people know also, not to just rely on some of the fake friends, because when you're in business, you want a lot of followers. We ended up paying people on Fiverr and all these other uh, contract work platforms, and then they just come up with a lot of uh, people that gonna leave feedbacks for you. And I noticed it because I used it before, and people were leaving messages that not even related to my services, you know. And those are things you want to be careful with. But it's so much more that, because computer keep getting better by the day, basically. uh, and whatever you learn now, make sure that you keep track of current events going on. Those programs that I just mentioned, Coursera, EDX, Grow with Google, those are the top ones, including iTunes U. You can download it off your app if you have an iOS device, and just take those classes for free. And they definitely helpful. They get you somewhere, because sometimes for the $49 or maybe $99, you get a certification. You can get a job with it if you really want to be in the tech industry. But for those that are entrepreneurs that want to do things for themselves, it's Google. Grow with Google is another one that Google do offer free courses for as entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I think that this is an area that's real key because that's what the economy is geared to. And the young people, young blacks especially, are high tech in their orientation. Last week, I was given numbers on the kind of high tech stuff that
Mhm.
black youth are into. And then our culture is creative, so we're into innovation. I noticed with some of my students who are into computer technology and in the business, one of the things they stressed is that blacks are real good at creating programs, you know, because of the creativity that's involved. And so that this whole realm opens you up to all kinds of areas when it comes to business. So, I think that this is extremely important, and you're to be commended for your work. You volunteered and done this. And in a lot of cases, guys or ladies who have criminal records, as long as it's not certain kinds of crime, and they got these kind of skills. It's kind of like construction. You can get a job, you know, and some of the people in those uh, industries are themselves crooks. You know what I mean? So, in more ways than one. But the point is, if you've got the talent, you got an opportunity. But we've literally got to shift this whole area of skill set so that young blacks, particularly, have a future with families and older blacks too. And being confined to these low-level jobs, $15 an hour, backbreaking jobs, and a whole lot of brothers are security guards and stuff like that. You know what I mean? In the healthcare industry, where they could be getting some skills, all kinds of skills in the healthcare industry, because this is a service sector that you can get into where you can do pretty well, an X-ray technician or you know, any number of things. The guy I used to go to work for Kaiser, and he just work on people's feet, just taking the hard skin off. That was a job. You know what I mean? And he owns a house in Oakdale, and he had owned one in Sacramento. You know what I mean? He's a little businessman, you know. But the point is, a little niche skill like that can produce something, you know. So young people, part of what I pointed out is, the forces that have hit black communities have caused a choice between two cultures. Some of us are stepping outside our culture. The drug thing is the best example. But the way you get back in is through your culture. In this case, high tech it, upgrade it. You know what I mean? Get creative with it.
Yeah.
um, there's a question here, and we're going to end on this one that I'll come into in a minute from King Pianki. But before we get into it, you just created, and you have in the background your business right there that you were able to put into this show. You've recently created Talio's, a high-end upscale coffee shop in the Bayview Hunters Point. What led you to make this decision? What distinguishes your coffee from other coffee brands on the market? Because it looks like you're into manufacturing or creating something. This isn't just where you're selling something, it's your own product. Um, what are you offering your employees in terms of salary, healthcare benefits, and so forth? How many people you got employed? The something like 96 or 97% of black businesses are owned by one person.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're going to tell me what I'm pretty well already know, that ain't where you are, that in and of itself is a big fat breakthrough. So just run that down, because this is important what you're doing here.
Yeah, I have actually for myself. I have eight employees that I have employed right now, and what two of them are actually contractors, but the other six are full-time employees that do uh, from everything from management all the way to the baristas, and that is
To the what?
baristas are people that do the coffee drinks, the specific coffee drinks. We have eight of them right now. We only have one location. A little history about the whole process is that Talios is actually on a mission to uh, create upscale coffee shops in historically, ethnically diverse communities, pretty much where most of our communities that predominantly used to be black are now diverse, because now we have everybody coming in there. You're looking at a lot of communities in Oakland, even in the Bayview in San Francisco right now, are just so diverse right now. But myself loving good coffee like Blue Bottle, although Blue Bottle is sold now to Nestle, and they started in West Oakland and got sold for $1 billion. Now moved out of West Oakland. Now they in Sacramento. The whole idea is that we want to make sure that we also have that quality product in our community. Again, the idea is to have upscale coffee shop or upscale products in our communities. Not for those prices. We can start out with, have people just pay things that they can afford, but we want to have that quality there and hire and train and educate the community of these services. If you really, if you want to find out about Blue Bottle, look at where they are located. None of them you're gonna find in our communities. Phil's started in the mission. They got big. They got funding. You can't even find a Phil's anymore in a marginalized community. They're all either in downtown or upscale neighborhood. Our goal is to stick within the community and do one at a time. What we ended up doing is with our product, all of our coffee blends, we have 15 coffee blends, we all named them after marginalized communities.
Whoa, 15.
15 blends, and they all named after marginalized communities. Our number one bestseller is Bayview. And to be frank, people love it. They just love that idea because we ended up finding a niche in the community or a niche in the industry. Coffee is an $80 billion industry. One thing I learned early on from Kenny Ray Carter, I don't know if you guys remember the movie Coach Carter. He taught me screen printing, and he said, never be afraid of competition. And we can see it also. You go to Chinatown, you see 20 Chinese restaurants next to each other, and they're all making $1. This we can do the same as well with good customer service, good marketing. And I know all those things cost money, and we're gonna get to it to figure out how we can actually help one another out to kind of even the playing field. But those are things that we want to do. We want to take those ideas that work. If it's not broken, don't fix it. We can take those ideas and bring it into our community. Let's go ahead and do the same thing. Bring that quality in. That's why I went around, look at different coffee shops. It took me about 10 years really to figure it out, right? Because I come into the Bayview, I go downtown, get a good cup of coffee, come back, can't find a good cup of coffee, can't find a good pastry. All you can find is donuts. Donuts is not good for us. We already dealing with high blood pressure and diabetes. Why add that to it? Why not bring in a avocado toast in the community? I had people ask me, man, you don't have any donuts now. Let's learn how to eat just like other people do. Just let's introduce it to it. My goal is that we also have once a month coffee tasting courses to the community to teach people how really to drink coffee. Coffee is an art. I always say that coffee is an international language. Rich, poor, white, black, whatever you are, we all drink coffee. You might not drink coffee, but you drink tea. But it's good to come in and sit nice in a comfortable coffee shop. You go to Blue Bottle. You know, you're gonna find whatever you want. They have a Starbucks in the Bayview, but you can find a Frappuccino, for example. But then you go a mile further down where the Warriors Chase Center is, and you can find a Frappuccino. Why you can find the same thing you can find in that area in our own communities? And that is why I wanted to change it. I want to do it one thing at a time, and that's why I started Talios. My next step is definitely I want to put a optometrist in the community. I want to put a boutique in the community. As I mentioned before, that all those things you can find in Piedmont, you can find in our upscale areas. Let's do one of them at a time in our area and clean up one block at a time.
Yeah, these glasses that I'm wearing, it's a optometry store owned by a Jamaican, and his niece is running it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Black owned,
yeah,
and upscale glasses at a
yep,
nice price.
yeah.
Um, how much are you paying people an hour? What kind of benefits do you give them? Because see, this is part of what this economic development is about. Is you own something and people who come in and work in it get some benefit. So, what is it you're paying per hour, and what kind of benefits people get?
Yeah, they started with $18 an hour up to $30 an hour, uh, as well as full benefits. You get medical, vision, dental. Right now, I'm working with my I call it payroll company to come up with a 401k plan for our employees, where if they put something in, we just match it. Uh, yeah, your profit will be a little bit less, but you know what? In the long run, you keep your employees because they happy with what they have, and they're gonna be working for it. And those are things that sometimes we need to do, and some of the sacrifices we're gonna have to make. uh, I hope not to work too much longer at my second job, but with the pandemic, that is what I had to do to keep my job so I can keep all my employees, because that is what we had to do, because otherwise we would have to shut down. But they're getting paid, they're getting the services they need. uh, if they need to go on vacation with the COVID-19, they were able to get all their shots, to make sure that everybody is safe. And we want to help people to have an income, keep their apartment, keep their home. Whatever bills you have, that they are actually paid for. But we want to make sure that whatever I have, they can enjoy as well.
Yeah, and that also speaks to the heart of a person. So you got a heart where you're doing something to help the community. Yeah, in the end, you hope to get some profit, but right now, you're doing good, probably to break even, get a little above even. That's how it goes when you first start.
Right.
So this is um, this is a clear thing. It's not enough to set up a business in Black community, ideally cooperative, but whatever we own. But to see that people are paid a good wage so that they can live a good life. And the more prosperous a person is with these businesses, the better people should be paid. But in this country, the more profitable these big guys are, Musk and these others, um, the more they pocket and the less people get. You know what I mean? And this is across the board. So this is extremely good. And I can see you're a connoisseur of coffee, because I was wondering, what's your motivation for this? Oh, I see. You like coffee, but you don't just like it,
Mhm.
you know it.
Yeah.
It's like some people I know who are real experts on wine or whatever. They can
Mhm.
taste it. They know, don't give them none of this syrupy, sweet
Yeah.
stuff. They know what wine really is. You know what I mean? And most people got a sweet tooth. Uh, America is sweet, sweet, but I know people who understand that sweet ain't supposed to be all that sweet, because they got this taste where they know what a good chocolate tastes like, as opposed to what you're getting at the corner grocery store.
Yeah.
So this is beautiful. Now, uh, King Pianki raised a point, and this is going to close this discussion. It's a good one. It's an observation, but it's for a question. I think a selective amount of blacks want to go into business for themselves, but don't know how to start a business. Is it important to focus on the why instead of the how in becoming your own boss? So, what are some of the things that you would say about starting a business? What are some of the things that we need to do or to know and to do to start a business?
With my take on that is, I looked at what was needed in the community. We do have coffee shops in the community, but I remember my sister and I going to this specific coffee shop, and the way they treated us, I was like, "Don't even pay for it. You don't even take it. Let's get up out of there." And those are things that we need, right? We need people to respect us, you know. But in the same time, yeah, we do respect you. You also need to respect us, and we need to see what is missing in the community. Let's start with that. We need something decent instead of going pay 2 3 times for it in another community. Let's come up with an idea to do it on a smaller version in the community and open up shop. Like I said before, I'm a risk taker. I'm gonna try it and do it. And when people see and they can feel it, they're gonna come and support you. Because I ask a lot of brothers in the community, man, let's do this, let's do that. Everybody agree, everybody want to do it, but nobody came. Nobody had the funding. What is understandable. I took the risk, and now you got a lot of praises. You got a lot of people want to come and they hang out. What is good? Because now they go out there and tell people about it. They really helping you to draw more people in. I mean, with that said, whatever we do, there are ways that not only out here in the Bay Area people know about you, but across country. Because we ended up selling coffee to companies all the way in Indiana. They buying $5,000. I mean, 5,000 bags worth of coffee at the time. We have a company that just bought our ginger beverage the other day in Chicago. This, whatever we do, there are ways to get our work, get our name out there, and I'm willing to be part of anybody's venture to kind of put the word out there. Let's help one another, and and come up with new ideas that we don't have in the communities that we do need. That is one way to really get started. It's not so much the why, but let's put it as they say, right? You build it, they will come. We put it out there. I mean, I have a hard time buying soul food from an Asian. I can't. You know, my sister and I, we made it a point since the pandemic. We're going from Sunnyvale all the way to Sacramento, and we support every weekend. We don't cook. We go to a black restaurant and buy food just to support, and we hope the same in return. But that is what we want to do. We want to just support as much as we can, and it's not, again, it's not so much about a why, but if you have an idea, you know, just do it.
Mhm. Right on. Um, Brother Ogawa, and we'll close on this one. The others were just comments, people making comments. He said, question, when building economic community ties in an impoverished area, how should someone begin the process of educating the community about cooperative economics? Um, in the case of this discussion we've had here, this would apply to both building businesses that are singly owned or cooperatively owned. You got any suggestions on that, Alton?
Yeah, with my project, I'm planning to reach out to community leaders, right? Because they know their community better than anybody else. And with that in mind, because then setting up almost like a co-op, as your question mentions, we can set something up where we train and educate the community what we have, and people will come, even if it's a pop-up, because we have so many empty spaces in our community now that whatever idea you have, let's get permits from the city and just go ahead and start having our uh, ideas in a pop-up and have people come and put it on social media, because most of us, that is what we watch these days, is the different things on social media, so that people can come and start supporting us even online. This sister called Yes Pudding, now she's going to be in the Ferry building. What is a great project. She got one of the best pastries out there. But yes, let's put them online, talk to the community, make little pamphlets. Not most of us don't really read those flyers anymore. When we see it on our cars, we take it and put it in a trash can. But if we can put it on social media with a little video, one person ask, hey, send it to the next person that you know, so that we get a word out there. But that is one of the things we should do, is like start talking to some of these landlords to see if we can do pop-ups in their locations, because their location is just sitting empty out there. Let's bring some life in our communities and have people start coming out and start shopping with us instead of just going downtown and just shop, 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 shop downtown, and none of the money is coming back into our community.
Now, Alton, you had made a comment, I think before we came on the show, that you were doing some things that the city required. Is the store open now?
Right now, we're doing some remodeling, replacing the floor. Today, we're just gonna go ahead and rip the floor off, and then on Monday they're gonna come and fix it. But we are open online. If you need anything, just email us or text us. We will supply it to you because people order from us online anyway, and we just ship it out. Another beautiful thing is that, like I said, we do encourage having pop-ups. We did ended up going to different community meetings. We find out about, for example, the diversity catering programs. This It doesn't hold us back. We still serve coffee to large corporations, like Genentech is buying our coffee, even the company that I work for. Whatever you have, make sure that you have a good relationship at work so that people can buy your product. That is a stepping stone. And we do sell coffee pretty much all over the country, in cafes, restaurants. We have a how you call it? We have a how you call this guy? A brewery that is using our beans now to make a stout. We have a chocolate company that is using our beans also to make a some candy. This There's opportunities out there. It might not be food, but whatever you have is definitely worth put it out there, so that people know what you have. We do need more businesses that are in our communities, and let's try to do it on an upscale level. The color makes a difference. Make
Yeah.
it bright. Let's go and copy. Let's look in downtown what works. Let's bring it to our own community. I mean, and that is what I'm doing, and I'm willing to support everybody's effort that is willing to do that so that we can actually do something great together.
What's the address of your business?
It's 4732 3rd Street, and it's on a main corridor business district in San Francisco.
Yeah, that Third Street is the main street
Yeah,
in the Hunters Point.
correct.
Um, so just to conclude this, I really want to thank you for your work, and for the good human being that you are. It's common for Black people that we have this level of humanity. This is one nice brother. He doesn't walk around with a big head,
Mm.
but with the skills he had, I know some cultures they couldn't get up because the head would take them down. This brother here, you don't even know that he's got these skills until he rolls them out. And I've seen him take stuff to people. I mean, as he's starting this business, he's delivering coffee to people and stuff like that. I said, oh, some of the one comment was that we'd like this in New York. Well, right now you can order and you can get your coffee. It will be sent to you. And note, he has an idea for setting up a chain of coffee
Yes.
shops. He's thinking big, but he's practical. One at a time. You know what I mean? And so this is a good model of how to go. So who would think that the OR, the original revolutionary, would be giving you classes on how to make money? Well, guess what?
Yeah. And also for the person that
Ain't a good thing.
also
Yeah.
for the person that said about the for New York, one of our blends is called after Brownsville. We're looking at different areas. If you guys have ideas, reach out to Dr. Tasaka, and we can always, we can make a another how you call it, Black Wall Street. But without talking about it, let's do it, because right now it's all in the talks and stuff like that. But we definitely want to go ahead and just show people that we can do it. I mean, other communities are flourishing. I mean, you go most communities are separated by the freeway, the affluent ones from those that are not doing well. But we can start doing something one at a time and together collectively.
That's why we have you on the show. You're walking your talk, brother.
Yeah.
It isn't just some air, it's
Yeah.
what's on the ground. So I really want to thank you.
Thank you.
People, tell your friends to go out and support Talios. The address again?
It's 4732 3rd Street in San Francisco. And the website is telioscoffee.com. Just check us out. Send us an email, ask questions, and I'm willing to share information with you to get your business started as much as I can, whatever I have, and I try to respond ASAP. I have a team that I help and educated that work with me so that they too can go ahead and respond to those emails that come in.
Right on. So Cinnabar has posted up here
Yep.
the address and also the email address and whatnot, how you reach him. So right on. So thank you, brother. I've
Anytime.
enjoyed this.
Yeah. Thank you,
See
guys.
what I'm doing is I'm getting former students who know more than me, who are coming on teaching, but by example.
Yeah.
And that's the biggest reward for me. I'm really proud of you. You
Thank you.
keep up the work, and whatever I can do to support you, you got my support 1000%.
Anytime. Anytime. And I definitely appreciate it, Dr. Tasaka.
We appreciate you. Okay, Hotep, until next week, folks, we're checking out.